Previously on the Comic Junkies Corner. You want a review too? Well, too bad. It's bad movie month is over, and I'm not shoehorning you in. What do I look like, Sony?
Well, perhaps we can make an arrangement.
What is this we nonsense? Where are you?
You're wasting time. We have a review to do. Our audience awaits. Let go.
You first.
We have a review to do.
Bad movie month is over.
Let go.
No.
Fine.
I hate you.
Pussy.
Pineapples.
What?
What? Where am I? What? What do you want?
Easy. Easy. You have a review to do.
Venom?
Yes.
If I review it, will you stop touching my face?
You review this movie, and you will be completely rid of me.
Completely?
Entirely.
Deal.
Okay, I'm kind of going to need my body for this, if you don't mind. My whole body?
You never use it.
Shut the fuck up! Nobody asked you, now let go! Hey there guys, Mikey here, and welcome to the Comic Junkies Corner. Are we sure this is the worst version of Venom? With the success of Spider-Man in the MCU, Sony just needed to remind us why the webhead is on loan to Disney in the first place. To a minuscule degree, I kind of get it. Spidey isn't fully solidified as a character in the MCU yet, unlike the other veterans. So, to introduce a villain like Venom would be a waste and probably a repeat of the missteps of Spider-Man 3. So, instead of waiting for proper character growth and a more epic introduction, Sony decided to create their own version of the character without the ties to the friendly neighborhood wall crawler. Does it work? Well, given the fact that they couldn't pronounce symbiote right in the previews,
We call them symbiotes.
I'm sure this movie
Is an absolute masterpiece.
Look, I usually do these reviews alone, so I'm gonna need you to not interfere.
It's my movie.
Exactly! So your opinion is biased and holds little weight. Don't worry, Simbi. Look, if I need your opinion, I'll give it to you.
What?
This is No. So the movie opens up with a space probe crash landing to Earth. This space probe is owned by the Life Foundation, a bioengineering corporation owned by Carlton Drake, our movie's main antagonist. The probe was on a mission to find new habitable worlds when it stumbles upon a meteor containing alien life forms. One of the life forms escapes and eventually causes fatal problems for the crew on board. If this sounds like something you'd rather watch over this movie, congratulations, you're not wrong. But you've likely already seen it. Still, though, can we watch one of these movies?
No!
Man.
That's Jameson.
Oh, come on. Can this guy ever catch a break? First he gets left at the altar by his fiancée, and now he gets his body taken over by an alien symbiote. Not to mention he's being raised by this guy.
I resent that.
This is cruel, man. So the alien symbiote escapes into the body of a paramedic, and they leave the scene of the incident. This, of course, brings up a very interesting question that will be asked many times. Where are the police? There's firemen, paramedics, members of the Life Foundation. I don't know how they got there so fast, but they're all on scene. All of these different forms of authority, except the friggin' authorities. Not even a government agency. A friggin' spaceship landed on Earth. Who's keeping people out of this area? Why aren't there news helicopters flying overhead? Who is keeping people with camera phones away from the scene? Who's keeping a perimeter around the scene just in case, oh, I don't know, an alien-possessed paramedic just happens to walk by? Anyway, the movie introduces us to our main character, Eddie Brock, played by Tom Hardy. This is arguably one of the best pieces of filmmaking in the movie. The editing is a bit jarring, but not bad. They work to recreate comic panels without making you feel dizzy, but at the same time, it allows us to learn about who Eddie is as a reporter. He's hard-nosed, he takes no nonsense, and he genuinely cares for people. He isn't afraid to call people out when they're obviously screwing people over. Eddie is also engaged to Anne Wang, played by Michelle Williams.
Wow, you wearing a suit? Yes. They love it when you wear the suit.
Thank you.
So, you are alive down there.
Dude! I hate you so much right now. My point is you're able to find out about all of this and there isn't a single line of expository dialogue. It's done through pure visual storytelling and it's pretty friggin' awesome.
So you admit this is a great film?
Slow down, Oil Slick, don't flatter yourself. It's one of like 2 times that it happens in the movie. Most of the rest of the dialogue in the first act is pure exposition. Not only that, it's exposition that we don't need. We get exposition during a dating scene of all times about why Eddie isn't in New York, which makes it seem like the movie is talking to those few people in the audience that are upset that the movie is taking place in LA. And while Eddie is talking to his boss, for reasons unknown, the movie decides to tell us that Eddie is a good hard-nosed reporter and that Carlton Drake is the bad guy, despite literally showing us this very thing not just a couple of minutes ago. Now, I know this is probably Monday morning quarterbacking, but if Eddie is such a good hard-nosed reporter, wouldn't he be trying to expose Drake on his own? It would provide that needed tension the movie needs between him and his fiancée, and it would serve to put his job at legitimate risk, giving a stronger reason for his termination later in the film. We wouldn't need the exposition, and you can keep the momentum going with the story and perhaps devote more time to developing other characters. I know I'm harping, but it's just weird that the movie switches gears like this from visual storytelling to exposition dumping. It's almost like somebody just took over the writer's body and started writing for him.
What a coincidence.
Sure it is. Moving on, Eddie, despite warnings from his fiancée and his boss, tries to expose Drake using sensitive information that only his fiancée knew about as she is his lawyer. This of course results in Eddie being fired, and breaking up with Eddie, and the symbiote from earlier moving to a new body. That last one might not have been related. So, 6 months later, okay, so I've already talked about time jumps in my solo review, and the same applies here. Now, there's nothing wrong with jumping long periods of time as long as there are valid reasons for it. Usually large time jumps are used to account for large changes. 28 days later is the perfect example. Person gets bit by a monkey with a virus, 28 days later, zombie apocalypse. So we've had a lot happen over the past, 3 minutes, and there is a murderous alien symbiote living among the people of Earth. So what big changes happened over the past 6 months? Of course, why do I even ask? Eddie is still broken up about his fiancée leaving him, he's still looking for a job, his fiancée is still mad at him, and the alien is literally in the same body. Nothing has changed! At this point you might as well say it's 6 days later. You might be able to make an argument for Anne's new boyfriend, but they barely have any chemistry, to the point where he may as well have been her brother. Hell, it would have made sense because she's also employed and would have needed a place to stay. Anyway, remember how I said there were a few occurrences of good visual storytelling? Well, in the second act we get another one, albeit far less subtle. It shows us that Eddie is going through a rough time and that he's really broken down. He's an alcoholic now, he's given up on his social justice ways, no longer wanting to go up to bat for the little guy. This is showcased pretty perfectly when the gangster comes in to shake down the convenience store that Eddie obviously frequents. Nothing is said about the shakedown, but the body language and eye contact with the store clerk tell all the tales that Eddie has witnessed this many times before. Except for the ridiculously huge apartment Eddie should not be able to afford, life kinda sucks for Eddie. Again, a pretty good moment, seemingly out of nowhere, sandwiched between some more ridiculousness. Would the original writer just come back for a second to get taken over? What the hell happened? Venom? Did you just nod off? You...
Turn that back on, I was watching that.
Damn it. So the Life Foundation was able to figure out that the alien life form is a symbiote that needs to bond to a host to survive. The host, however, needs to be compatible. Otherwise, the body will reject the symbiote, much like an incompatible organ. I gotta admit, that's pretty cool. It explains why the host dies after the symbiote on the outside goes from one body to the next, and why the symbiote appears to be very selective. Yeah, let's see how well that rule holds up. Drake, of course, immediately wants to begin human trials, but the doctor that has obviously been working alongside of him for a long time suddenly has an issue with this. Despite numerous cases of them testing drugs and other things on people and killing them, this is suddenly stepping over the line. Why? Because it's an alien?
That's just racist.
Very good. What he said. So they begin human trials on homeless people, and of course people start dying. So of course she goes to the first figure of authority that will be able to protect her as well as take down Carlton Drake, Eddie. The movie could explain to us how in the world she managed to find a washed up reporter in all of California, but the movie would rather say frick off. Eddie is reluctant at first, but eventually does help her out. They go back to the Life Foundation together in order for Eddie to gather evidence, but Eddie, while trying to help someone else, inadvertently releases the symbiote that eventually takes over his body. The guards chase after Eddie, but he is able to escape by crashing through doors, gates, and trees, all while being not even the least bit amazed by what he's doing. I guess once you've beaten a Batman, nothing really surprises you anymore.
I would break you!
It's at this point we get arguably the funniest scene in the movie, Eddie dealing with the symbiote taking over. Tom Hardy does a really good job here with the physical acting, comedic timing, and improvisation.
This is dead. Dead.
Like I said, it's funny, but it doesn't make a lick of sense. None of the other hosts so far have dealt with this kind of thing where they just start acting like crazy people. They've all just been mindless drones, so it brings into question what the rules of symbiosis are. Why does it affect Eddie so differently? Is it because he's a match? Well, Drake is also a match, and he isn't acting like that. In fact, when Riot takes over his body, he seems to be completely normal and about his wits. So which is it, movie?
Don't ask! I said don't ask! I said don't ask! No questions!
Okay. Moving on, I guess. Drake's henchmen find Eddie, and we finally get some Venom action. And, well, it's not boring. I appreciate the use of a lot of practical effects and legitimate stunt work along with the blending of CGI. It's well shot, but nothing monumental. Tom Hardy once again does some pretty good physical acting. The main question I have as all of these people are tearing through the streets of LA is, where are the police? Seriously, there are literal explosions happening up Main Street and there isn't a single cop to be found. Like, not even a bike cop. What is it? Is the purge going on? It may as well be, because when they finally do show up, it happens right the frick out of nowhere. And it's not just one or two, but the entire friggin' police force shows up. Where the hell were you? Trapped in a sewer? Well, I guess we should talk about Venom. Venom looks... I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the detail and effort that they took to get him close to the comic book design, but unpopular opinion, he looked better in Spider-Man 3.
What?
Hear me out. Now, granted, Sony doesn't have a Disney budget or ILM to do their effects, so Venom most likely looked as good as he was going to look, and in terms of comic accuracy with size and stature, it's pretty cool. Even giving him a wet and slimy look was pretty inventive, and a good way to make him look more alien, similar to the Xenomorphs. But because Venom in this iteration is a fully rendered CGI character, it kind of throws things off a little bit. When he's on screen by himself, he looks fine, but around actual people, not so much. You can tell he really isn't there, and that might be why I prefer the one from Spider-Man 3. Despite the misuse of the character, it felt like he was really there because he was. It was the art of blending CGI and practical effects so it could eventually fool your eye. And yeah, I know we've had and still have fully CGI characters, but keep in mind these were also done where the artist had a lot more time and a lot more money, and in some cases, templates to build off of. So yeah, Venom doesn't look bad, but he also doesn't look great at the same time. Though, I will say it's kind of odd that for a movie that doesn't involve Spider-Man, Venom has an uncanny ability to sense danger before it arrives, almost as if he has a spider sense. Venom, what's up with that? Okay. So Eddie decides to go to the new studio that fired him to drop off some evidence with the awkward help of Venom, only to be greeted by the friggin' SWAT team. What kind of news studio has the friggin' SWAT team on standby if there's a break-in? Like, Eddie just goes from 0 to 4 stars in GTA, like... So Anne finds Eddie/Venom, somehow, and is freaked out for a second, but quickly goes into mom mode.
Hospital! Right now.
Is she grounding him? Drake, as stated earlier, is possessed by the other symbiote Riot in the meantime. I guess no one was looking for that little girl, huh? What, did she have the same parents as Billy Batson? Sorry. So Anne takes Eddie to the hospital, only to find out that the symbiote is actually killing him. She manages to separate Venom from Eddie with high-frequency sound, because apparently she knew that would happen, but the bad guys find Eddie and take him to the Life Foundation, not knowing that he no longer had the symbiote in him. Also, he's somehow still alive after being separated. It doesn't even matter at this point. Drake/Riot finds out Eddie no longer has the symbiote and thus no longer has use for him.
Come and clean up your mess!
No, it doesn't end there. See, that would make sense. No, they have to take Eddie to some remote location, despite them being okay with killing in the lab beforehand. I guess they realized Eddie's plot armor was way too thick and needed to get him away from the movie. So they take him out to the woods and...
Did your mama not love you?
I'm kidding, he's fine. No, they decided to have a conversation with him, as Anne, now infected with the Venom symbiote, saves the day because she is compatible too, because why not? And then this happens. Anyone else feel like they need to shower? So Venom reunites with Eddie. I guess the whole thing about the symbiote killing him was suddenly cured?
Got better.
And once again, we are presented with our last pretty good element of the movie. And it's actually something that has been sprinkled sneakily throughout the movie. While we have known the Venom symbiote to change the personality of the host in previous lore, it's actually Eddie's personality and humanity that bleeds over into Venom. Again, the rules of symbiosis are questioned here, but while delivered on the nose, I kinda like the idea. And it legitimately changes the Venom symbiote's motivation throughout the film. That's right, the friggin' Venom symbiote has the best arc in this movie. What even is life right now? So Venom and Eddie, now working as one, go to stop Riot, who plans to go back to his planet so they can return and take over the world. They fight, Venom wins, and life goes on.
You want to talk about that kiss?
That was your buddy's idea.
There are so many images in my head that I do not want right now.
I don't mind them.
Anyway, that is Venom, guys.
Wait.
What?
There's more.
There's gonna be carnage.
The hell it ain't. This movie is over. Done. Finito. Fin. Jeez Louise, Sony. You had one job. Not to make this movie. Obviously you couldn't do that, so you had another job. Make the movie at least good. I don't know about you guys, but when a movie has so much potential and fails, that is the most disappointing thing for me. You had some good actors, a competent filmmaker who had some good ideas, but the problem really just arises from the script that everyone had to work with. Don't get me wrong, the main focus is definitely Eddie, and he's written fine. But your main villain is just generic. He's a mad scientist with a god complex that uses eye-roll-inducing dialogue when he could have been a sympathetic character who had some tragedy in his life, making questionable choices for what he believes is for the good of mankind. That way when Riot inhabits him, he can kinda go off the deep end. I'm not saying this needed to be a dark film because we've had those kind of villains in movies before and it was still able to maintain its campy tone. And I have to bring up Anne once again. The reason I bring her up is...
Because she brings you up.
Shut up! The reason I mention her is because she is the main supporting character. Granted, Michelle does a good job with the role. She's funny and her delivery is pretty good when she doesn't have to exposit things in a natural way. But the only thing we know about her is that she's the fiancé turned ex. She's not a damsel in distress or anything like that, which is appreciated, but she could have and should have been more than the movie version of an NPC.
I will never forget you.
Nor are you. Retha?
I will never forget you.
Retha?
No, Spider-Man does not need to be in this movie.
Is that a baby elephant?
Yes, it's an elephant. Why?
Snack time.
You should go. Yeah, sorry guys, but Spider-Man would definitely not have made this film any better. The script just needed some serious revisions. Flesh out the characters more, minimize the plot holes and continuity errors, establish the rules of symbiosis and stick with them as much as possible. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make the art of writing seem simple. It's not by any means, but someone had to have read this and seen all the problems that this script had. We could have had a nice contained story without Spider-Man, but instead what we got was a jumbled mess. There are some things in the movie worth enjoying. I can't say it's the worst movie I've watched, but let's just say I am glad this was not Stan Lee's last movie cameo. There! I reviewed your damn movie, alright? Now can you please leave? Go crawl up someone else's ass!
As promised, I will take my leave. I do have a sequel to write. Trust that I will return. We have so much unfinished business.
Okay, fine, but until then, can you not hang around in my body like a freaking stomach parasite or something?
Parasite?
You heard me.
Take it back.
No.
Well, if that's how you want to play it, perhaps I will make my exit like a stomach